Okay, we are talking with Uncle Les. We interviewed Aunt Ellie. Now it's Uncle Les's turn, the baby of the family.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing, growing up, you had a dog.
We had a dog on and off. I don't think we ever had one.
Yeah.
Always. I
No.
think now when you was up on the farm in New Jersey, you always had a farm.
Probably, right. That's
think you had
true,
a dog.
right. But down there, we had a German Shepherd, and I think his name was Lad, is what we called him. But I remember one word we had that we used, "Fooey,"
Hooey?
which in German
Fooey?
means, in German that means bad. So if he did something wrong, we'd say, "Fooey."
Oh, Fooey. Okay.
Fooey,
Yeah.
Fooey, yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
I didn't remember that.
Do you remember anything about moving from Jersey to Florida?
The only thing I remember is I was in the back seat and Lillian was, I think, in the middle, and she was next to me. And every time we would go over a bridge, she wanted me to cover her eyes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's good.
Now,
That's pretty much all I remember. I remember stopping in the motels and eating at the roadside places.
And
Well, I
they,
think-
they didn't call them motels either. They called them tourist cabins.
Right.
Yeah.
now, how old were you?
5.
You were 5. And Dad, you would have been...
I'd have been 9 or 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us about the house growing up. Well, you tell us what you remember, and we'll have Dad either correct you or tell him what he remembers.
Yeah.
Okay, it was an old house. When we first moved in it, it didn't have electricity and it didn't have a bathroom. I don't know how long we was there before Dad.
And how many of them were in the house? Would it be
8.
8?
Yep. There was 4 bedrooms upstairs, and there was actually, when we first moved in, there was no bedrooms downstairs.
Right.
Because when Dad put the plumbing in, he closed in part of the porch and put in a bathroom and a bedroom downstairs where Mom and Dad slept.
So no plumbing
No plumbing.
for how many years?
I don't know.
Well, it would have been about 2 years. And the reason that there was no plumbing in there was no electricity. So without electricity, you couldn't have an electric pump. But the reason for that was that the house really was wired for electricity. But during the war years, they stripped out all of the lead wires of homes that were not or that were vacant. So since Dad and Mom bought the house in '42, that was in the middle of the war, and there was a restriction on any new installations. So we had to wait until after the war before the light company would connect it back up. Yeah. So we lived without electricity, which meant that we used kerosene lamps for lighting. Yeah.
And I do remember the Iceman coming around with buy blocks of ice from the Iceman, put it in we had an ice box and put it in the ice box.
Big tongs you'd carry with
the
you?
big tongs.
And you remember how we told him how much ice we wanted?
No.
Well, there was a card that had 4 numbers on it. 25, 50, 75, or 100, and depending on which way you put the card in the window, he would know what you wanted. So he didn't have to come up and knock on the door. He already knew what we wanted, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned no running water.
Right.
How did you take your baths?
In a tub, outdoor tub.
And heat
Wash
the water
tub.
on the stove,
Heat the water in the wintertime. I think in the summer we just took cold baths.
Yeah.
Now, did you dump the water out each time, or did you end up taking a bath in soapy water from somebody else's bath?
Well, that would be embarrassing.
Yeah, and probably the way it worked, Les being the youngest, he probably got to be the last one to do. I don't remember that, really.
You don't?
No. But, Les, do you remember in the summertime, though, we would have these showers every afternoon. They'd pop up showers, and Mother would let us play out in the rain if it wasn't thunder and lightning
Right.
going on. Yeah. And I remember we'd even take a bar of soap out there and actually take a shower.
take a shower out in the rain, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was nice, warm water, really.
Yep. And our hand pump was on the back porch, so we just hand pumped for the water.
Yeah.
I guess there was probably not a furnace in the house, or was there?
No.
He
We
didn't
had
have
a
a stove?
Kerosene stove.
Yeah.
Same thing with the cook stove was kerosene.
Yeah.
I think we had a stove in the living room
Mm-hmm.
downstairs, and that was our heat.
So
Well-
when Grandma would make the meals on a kerosene stove,
Right.
is that similar to a wood? But when I don't know if I could tell, or it looked like a regular stove, it just ran on kerosene instead of gas.
Yeah, it had as I remembered, it was like a 3-burner, and then it had a jug at the end of kerosene, and turned upside down, it would feed a gravity feed into the burners, and as it burnt, the kerosene made that clung, clung, clung sound.
Oh, because it sounds as a jug emptying.
Right.
Yeah.
Indian,
Right.
okay.
But there was an oven at the end of it then too that had a separate burner.
Now, I think you said Grandma would make bread.
Right, but I don't know if she made it in the kerosene oven or later on when we had a
Yeah.
cook stove.
That's
probably
probably-
we had a. I don't know if we had a wood stove or a gas stove. I think it was gas.
It was gas, yeah, because we had I can remember a propane gas tank.
Right,
Uh,
right.
But back to that pump though too, Les, that pump that was in the kitchen was the one that pumped water from the cistern. The cistern which was collected the rainwater. So it wasn't for drinking, but it was used for washing dishes and bathing and stuff, yeah.
Did we have another pump for drinking water?
Yeah,
Oh,
but
okay.
that's the one that was outside the door, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Tin roof,
Yes.
so you hear the rain hitting the.
Oh, yes, uh-huh.
And your bedrooms are upstairs, so you're closer to the tin roof. Was it
Right.
loud?
I don't know that we particularly cared or noticed it.
Yeah.
But we didn't get rain at night very often. Most of the time it rained in the afternoons.
But also, we really didn't hear it. You know, that house was high ceilings, 10-foot ceilings upstairs, and then the attic you could stand up in also. So it was pretty well insulated from sound of the rain on the roof. Yeah.
Boys all upstairs?
Oh yes.
I'm not sure where Lillian slept.
Yeah, she slept in the front room. Remember
That little room?
The little room that was right off. Well, Mother and Dad had the front room on the right side, and she had the little room on the left side. Right up at the
And then we
By
slept
the
together.
stairs.
I don't know who slept with who, but we
well,
shared a bed, didn't you?
right. But you remember we ended up after Lillian moved downstairs, and Mom and Dad moved downstairs. We really had to hold upstairs, but we liked that big dormitory room.
Right.
And we had beds in there, and we liked being together there, so we communicate instead of having our own rooms. Yeah.
Yeah, that back bedroom ran the whole width of the house. So it was a big room.
Big room.
Like a big dormitory room.
Yeah.
Yep.
Chores. Who had chores and what chores were they?
I don't recall having chores.
Well, we really
Except doing some yard work.
You said Grandpa had a cow.
He did, but that
and
wasn't
some
my
chickens.
department.
Well, you didn't deal with that.
Until I got
You
older,
were too young.
when I got into my teens and had chickens for the 4-H.
Mhm.
I didn't have any animals.
Yeah, I took care of the cow. That
Okay.
was my responsibility to milk the cow, feed the cow, and take it out to pasture before going to school, and then reverse. And I did that until I was probably maybe my sophomore year, and then I had the job at the school. So Charles, I think, was the one that took over the cow chore. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do remember taking the cow out, staking it out. Wherever there was green grass, we'd take it out, have
Yeah.
a chain on the cow, and put a stake in the ground.
And the cow was for milk.
Yep.
Yeah,
Milk the cow.
yeah.
Yeah.
And-
Vegetable garden? Did Grandma and Grandpa have a garden?
Not a big one. In New Jersey, I remember they did have a big garden there, and Mother did a lot of canning. But in Florida, we didn't. Yeah, we had a few things, a few garden, and we had chickens, of course, always. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about school. You said you went to a different school than Dad did.
Right. When we first moved down here, I wasn't old enough to go to school because they didn't have a kindergarten. So I started in first grade in the Sorrento School, which was a one-room, 4-grade school.
All right, let's unpack that for a moment. One room, 4 grades.
Right.
Yeah.
So and one teacher.
One teacher
So she was teaching 4 different grades at one time.
at one time.
So how many kids were in your grade?
I don't really remember, but I'm guessing probably 20 to 24.
Okay.
Didn't they close the school before you got through the 4th grade, though?
Right. They closed the school
Teacher
after
quit. She
third
said
grade.
that was it.
Right.
Yeah, I went to Mount Dora, started in the 4th grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you had homework
hmm
and you needed help, did you go to Grandma or Grandpa?
I usually went to Chet.
Do you remember who you might have had who helped you with homework?
I would think probably I'd ask Mom for spelling or something like
Uh-huh.
that, but I don't really remember.
Yeah, Mother was a good speller.
Was she?
That was
Yeah.
one thing that I know Les and I, neither one liked spelling,
Yeah.
struggled
Right.
with that. Yeah.
Who was disciplinarian? Who, when you had to be disciplined, was it Grandma or Grandpa?
I don't know because I never did anything.
You never
bad.
did anything wrong, did you? Let me ask that question to Dad then. So,
Well-
who was the disciplinarian?
I think it would have been mother.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't remember really either one of them being real strict about it. Or we just must have been pretty good kids.
Pretty good
we didn't
kids.
get in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really remember getting any whippings at home.
No.
I did get some from school.
Right.
But I remember I did something, and Charlie started chasing me around the house. So, and he's the one that got in trouble, and he got a whipping from Dad.
Okay, but he started.
I started it, but he
Yeah.
got the punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was back in the days when you did get paddlings at school for minor things even, which
Yeah.
is just unheard of today, of course, yeah. But I never felt disciplined out of order, even though you think of it now, well, why did I get disciplined because I didn't do my homework and that kind of stuff. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, who was the troublemaker growing up? Who was more likely to get in trouble with the teacher? We kind of established before that in LA you had kind of two separate families. You had the older ones, the ones who grew up in Jersey, and then your family that kind of grew up in Florida. Of the ones who grew up in Florida, who was more likely to be the one that got in trouble?
Probably Charlie and I, because I don't think Chet ever got in trouble.
Yeah, really, and that if it was less than Charlie, it would have been after I was out of school and didn't know it, because I don't recall anybody really having any disciplinary problems at school.
Really?
No.
Yeah, I think though Charlie did run around with a couple of bad guys. One that got him in trouble, with flying that plane and getting a plane accident. That was.
None of us really got in any serious trouble.
No.
So you're unique in some respect that you've lived most of your life just a few blocks from
Right.
where you besides from Jersey. Your house and the house you live in now is what, a block or two away?
2 blocks.
2 blocks.
Yep.
Now you lived somewhere else as well.
Well, only when I was in the service. Other than that, well, no, we did live. When I first got married, we lived in a house up on the Sereno Plymouth Road for about 4 years.
Okay.
But that would have been within 2 miles.
Yeah, still within 2 miles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now help me out. You told me the night, but help me out again. The house you're in actually was a relative at one time owned that. Is that correct?
Right. We bought it from our dad's cousin, I believe, Walter Weinman.
Okay.
Actually, we didn't buy it from him because he had deceased, and I bought it from his children, his
Okay.
3 daughters. Because his wife also died, so.
Yeah. We talked about you went into the Navy.
Right.
Yeah. Why did you weren't drafted? You enlisted. In the
I
Navy.
enlisted, right.
Why did you enlist to not?
I don't know. There was 3 of us that went in together, and we just chose the Navy for. I have no idea why. Other than that, 2 of my brothers was in the Navy.
Yeah. And of course, you served in non-war time. Is that correct?
Right.
There was no. It wasn't Vietnam. It wasn't
No, it was
Korea.
it was between the Korean War and the Vietnam War.
Okay. What'd you do?
I was a gunfire control technician,
Mhm.
which controls the firing of the guns. Nothing really to do with the guns, with the radar that spotted the planes and then locked onto them.
Were you on ship?
I was on an aircraft carrier.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. How long were you at sea?
Well, I was there. I was in the service for 4 years and 9 months, but other than being in school, I was on that same ship the whole time.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
And basic was in you said Great Lakes.
Great Lakes. Yep.
So then, from Great Lakes, where'd you go?
Well, from there I went to radar school, and then I went to Norfolk, Virginia, and got on the carrier, and went to the Mediterranean. Twice we made tours to Mediterranean, and then we come back, and I went to gunfire control school, and then we made one more tour to the Mediterranean, and they changed our carrier from an attack carrier to a surveillance carrier, so we no longer we just went up and down the coast, from Canada to Keys.
Had you been away from home prior to joining the Navy?
Furthest I think I ever was at 4-H camp, which was probably 60 miles away.
Didn't you go to the church camp? The Nazarene,
Oh, that's right. We went to a Nazarene church camp also,
Okay.
which was in Live Oak or Lake
Was,
City.
was that with mom and dad, or a brother and sister, or were
No,
you,
with Charlie.
okay? So
and-
you at least had a sibling with you.
Right,
This is the first time to be away from home and by
by
yourself.
myself, correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
But when I was in the Army, stationed at Fort Monmouth, Doris and I were there, and you came up and visited us. Where were you? What were you doing then? You were stationed in Virginia, or was it Washington D.C.?
No, we was in Norfolk, Virginia. It was just a long weekend pass.
Okay, yeah. And you hitchhiked up there, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
You hitchhiked.
Twice.
Okay.
From Virginia to New Jersey, yeah.
Now, and let's backpedal a little bit. That was probably hitchhiking was a little bit more acceptable.
Oh yeah,
And you probably, I know, Dad, you said you did it
Yes.
from Sorrento to Mount Dora. That you just
Oh, we did that all the
People
time
do it
because
time.
when I was in high school, because I was in high school and then worked after school and then went to basketball practice, and then hitchhiked home, and it was never a problem catching
Back in that
a
day, it
ride.
really wasn't hitchhiking. You just stood out there by the side of the road and
someone picked
Somebody
someone.
picked you
stop
up.
for
you
you.
know?
And it was usually people
Right.
you knew.
Oh,
Sometimes, but pretty much I always got to ride with the same person. He was a, I can't remember if it was a Coca-Cola truck driver or a Pepsi Coke driver, but if I was there, he'd always stop and pick me up.
So, discharged from the Navy, you went back home to Sorrento
Right,
or Mount Dora.
Sorrento.
Uh-huh.
Well,
with a career in mind of what you might want to do, or
no, I just started working for Electrotech, was repairing electronic equipment.
is that some of your Navy training translate into that, or was it
Not
something-
really, no. And I did live in Orlando for about a year, and then Uncle Ed moved down here, and I lived with him in a trailer across from Dick and Dot's till I got married.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
So, did you ever move back home, in the physical home, or did you?
Other than for very short time before I went to Orlando.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say maybe a couple months.
Uh-huh.
But I lived with a guy that I went to school with because he worked in Orlando, and so we just got an apartment over there.
interesting thing when Les finished his tour of duty in the Navy, the newspaper, the Mount Dora newspaper had an interesting article about the eighth son finishing coming home from his service in the Navy, and it said that was not anything real unusual, except for the fact that he was the eighth of the sons. That all the sons, all of our brothers and sisters, siblings, all of our brothers served in the military. Plus the fact that our sisters' husbands, so in other words, our brother-in-laws, also had served
Wow.
during the Second World War. Yeah.
Now, were you a good son? Did you write Grandma and Grandpa a lot when you were in the Navy?
Not as much as I should have, but I never yet got reprimanded for not, because some kids don't write home and then they'll get a letter or get something from the captain and or the chaplain
Yeah.
and said you need to write a letter home to your parents.
So, what was the longest you were away from home? When you boot camp to your?
I came home after boot camp, and then when I went to the school and the ship, it was probably a year.
Wow.
Because we was over in the Mediterranean for 9 months after school, so it was probably a good year.
Did you have a special request when you got home for Grandma to make a certain type of meal that you said? Did she make something that you really liked that you missed?
Not that I recall, no.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember anything
Yeah.
special.
And on that, Dad always remembered there being a certain night of the week for certain meals. Do you remember that too?
I more remember chicken dinners on Sunday. Fricassee chicken dinner
Yeah,
on
he
Sunday.
mentioned that
That
too.
same thing,
Yeah,
Jeff.
chicken fricassee.
Jeff remembered, yeah.
Yeah.
But during the
Fricassee
week, I
chicken,
mean,
yeah.
usually it was pretty much, because there was so many of us, it was like a pop meal, something that everything
Were there
together.
many leftovers, or was it pretty much devoured?
Not much left over.
Yeah.
You asked about chores earlier, and we didn't really don't think about the chores around the house, although we did have some. No girls in the house, so us boys had to do washing of the dishes, and
Yeah.
we did take turns with that, if I
Right.
remember
We
right. Yeah.
took turn. We did the general things like having to make our beds and
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was thinking of one chore that we did that was a fun thing, and that was that Dad was the deacon of the Presbyterian church that we attended, and he also had the responsibility of the janitor work at the church. So we helped clean the church, but the fun part was that we also got to ring the bell.
Oh.
So that was always fun, twice on Sunday.
And that church that we've had reunions.
Yes,
Before.
that's
correct.
That is
Yep.
correct. Yeah.
Yep.
What was the name of that church?
Sorrento.
Sorrento Presbyterian
Presbyterian, yeah.
Church, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know whether whether Les, did you ever get to ring the bell? Did it
Yeah.
get passed on down to you
Yep.
finally to do? Yeah.
I don't know what they did after I left home. Who rang
Yeah.
it?
Now,
Well,
I-
Dad had to ring it, I guess.
I've asked you before, but I'm going to get this on tape. Grandpa was a house painter. Did he ever encourage you to go into his line of work?
No. Even if he had encouraged me, I doubt I would have went. Because I didn't. I didn't then, and I don't now like to paint.
Yeah. Yeah. Did he ever encourage you to
No.
Do you remember going to work with your
No.
dad?
I
With
did
Grandpa?
a few times when he would paint. I would go and scrape the paint off the windows where you got some paint on the
Yeah.
windows or something.
Mhm.
I had a full-time job, though, at Spilkey's for my last 2 years of high school. So I really didn't have time to help him or didn't need to help
Yeah.
him.
Mhm.
But,
Did you have a part-time job?
Yeah, I worked after school sweeping classrooms. I think I started that in the sophomore year. Charlie did it before I did, and then he took Chet's job when Chet left, and then I took his job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you remember what you made?
It was like $1 a day, probably. I think my check was like $30 a month.
Yeah.
yeah.
What'd you spend it on?
I didn't save it, I'll tell you that.
Did you buy a car?
I
Did you
never
have a
bought,
car?
never bought a car. Never
Okay.
bought a car until I got out of the service.
Okay.
You know, you mentioned about Dad having us help him. I don't remember any specific chores or something, but what I do remember that we had complete access to the tools in the garage. He'd let us play with them and putter around with them.
Mhm.
You know.
Make-
Makes sense.
Make
And of
something-
course, back then there were no power tools; they were all hand
Yeah.
tools. You know.
Right.
And my favorite one was the they don't call it a drill; they called it
The
what was it called?
hurdy-gurdy?
No.
Not the one.
Well, I don't know.
I don't.
Brace and bit.
Brace and bit.
Brace
yeah,
and
there you
bit.
go.
There we go. Yeah, it's
Much
called a
better.
brace and bit. Yeah.
So now your grandparents, do they live nearby?
Yeah, they lived down the road about 2 blocks, I guess.
What do you remember of them?
Not very much, other than they just came down in the wintertime. I remember going to Sanford because they'd come down by train and pick them up at the railroad station.
And this
Mom
would
and
have
Dad.
been grandma's or grandpa's parents?
Grandpa's
Your
parents.
parent, your dad's, your mom's. Okay.
My dad's.
Your dad's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I never knew my mom's
And
parents.
What did you call them?
Grandma and grandpa.
Your own grandpa.
Yeah.
Well, Les, tell us about that hole in the floor. Though.
Yeah, I was getting that. Yeah. So this is where we learned there was called a silly cellar, and this was the house you're talking about.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I guess I don't know whether it was right after we moved down here or shortly thereafter we went down to their house, and Grandpa lifted this thing up out of in the middle of the living room floor, and I said, and I said, what is it? And he said, cellar. I said, that's a silly cellar.
And they would put food in there or
Yeah.
things to keep cool.
Yeah,
Just
and
things
it
to
was
keep-
cool.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
Under the house, yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And it had a screen around it so that insects, bugs
Mhm.
couldn't get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't closed in or anything other than the screen.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long something would stay good down there, but
Yeah. So did you get together, like we have family reunions now, and I get to know all my cousins, and did you have anything like that? Did you?
other than Thanksgiving, I remember when Walt and Ada, which is our cousins, would come to the house,
Yeah.
and Grandma and Grandpa. Other than that, that was in our family.
Yeah. We only took one.
There's such a big family anyway. You didn't need more cousins around, did you?
Right.
We only took one vacation that I remember, and that was in '51 when we went to New Jersey
Right.
between my junior and senior year. Yeah.
So that was the only vacation you
That
ever
was an
taken?
adventure, sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't remember. I mean, I remember the trip because I remember jet driving some, but
Yeah.
usually when we get to a city, Dad always drove because he didn't want jet driving through the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Traffic.
it wasn't Dad so much as Mother.
It was Mother, yeah.
She was pretty nervous.
So-
a very
And-
nervous rider.
I asked you, Grandma never drove.
No,
No.
No.
Mm-mm.
no. But
No.
one of us always sat in the front seat because there was 6 of us, so we had 3 in the back.
And
three
what
in the
kind of
front.
car?
Well, I remember the year that we went to New Jersey. It was a DeSoto.
Was it?
Yeah. I don't remember what year it was, though, but it was a gray one. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, by today's standards, would have you been considered middle class, upper, lower middle class?
Or-
I don't think, for me, I don't think we really knew.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that would be my next follow up. Was
Yeah.
do you ever remember wanting something? I mean, it sounded like you had food.
Oh, we always
Yeah.
had
Oh yeah.
we always had food and clothes.
Yeah.
Maybe not
And
the best
and
of
the
clothes,
clothes-
but
The clothes were not new; they were hand-me-downs
Hand-me-downs.
usually. We handed them down to each other, and it seemed like there was somebody in New Jersey that would send packages of clothes down to Mother. I don't know who. It
and then
would
when we
be,
got
but-
older and had work, then we bought some of our own clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Dad talks about remembering the Sears and Roebuck catalog coming.
Oh yeah, and
Do you remember that?
Montgomery Ward. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
As we look back, though, we know that we were a poor family. We didn't have a whole lot. We couldn't have had when you think about the
No,
size of the
no.
family.
But when you're living it, it didn't seem.
Right.
Pretty much everybody in the area was the
You don't
same
remember
way it
going to bed
was.
hungry.
No,
And
unless we was being disciplined.
talk about the finance of the family. Now, this was before Les and my time. Les wasn't even born, and I was just a baby though. But when Mom and Dad moved to New York State and bought that farm, things were going really pretty good until the Depression hit, and then they even survived the Depression. But then the following year, that they were finally coming around, then the big flood hit them. And they couldn't get the milk to the creamery for over a month, and still had to feed the cows, so there was no income but a lot of expense. So,
Yeah.
so they ended up losing the farm. So as I think back on it now, I wish I could have remembered to ask Mom and Dad about those
Yeah.
years. It must have been very
Yeah.
difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Had to
Yeah.
have been. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Les and I don't think in our growing up in Serrano experienced anything like that. Dad had a good job at painting and
hmm
Well,
And there wasn't as many of us to feed as there was when you was up,
Right.
up in New Jersey and New York.
right.
and he must have instilled the work ethic that you guys, all of the Weinmans, seem to-
Definitely,
seem to have.
definitely. Yeah.
At the taping of this, Uncle Les, you were how old?
When we moved.
Right now, as we're taping this right now, you are how
Oh,
old?
80 years old.
80 years old, and you're still
80s.
working.
Yes.
Yeah.
So those of we listened to this years down the road. Uncle Les is 80 years old and still working. And I think we established his first job was working at the school. So that's you've been working a long time.
Right.
He's
Yes.
helping to pay our Social Security check. Yeah.
But that had to be instilled. And Grandpa died after working, didn't he?
Right.
was
Yeah.
still
He
working.
worked the day he died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that must have been instilled in him that
Yeah.
hey,
Yep.
you know, you get enjoyment out of that work. Let's talk a little about. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say all our family, all are working and have good. They all have good families that have good jobs and work
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
And so it's a family thing.
Family.
It's-
I think it is. I think
Yeah.
it's instilled in it.
Yep.
Traced back to probably your grandparents, or maybe even.
Oh, I imagine our grandparents was
Work,
hard.
yeah.
Well, I know Grandpa Weinman was a hard-working man because he was a carpenter
Yeah.
until he retired.
Well, we always thought, my generation thought you were one of the coolest uncles because you had one of the coolest jobs. You delivered the paper. In the peak of your business, how many papers were you delivering?
Well, I'd had other people working
Right,
for
okay,
me.
yeah, yeah.
But my-
How many pa-
I have
rephrase it.
delivered up to 1,200 by myself.
Okay, by yourself. How many were you responsible for?
Oh, over 2,000
Over 2,000 papers delivered, and that was daily.
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 Yep. And most of it, well, over half of it was out in rural areas.
Okay.
So it was a lot of miles that
Yeah.
I was driving and the people that was working for me.
Now, I think you told me that you started out as doing that part time.
Right.
When you worked on repairing electronics.
Right.
That was your full time job. When did you make the jump? That would have been quite a leap of faith to jump from that to delivering papers.
Yeah. Well, because when I first started delivering papers, it was like 150 to 200 papers. And then when I got some other routes where it got up into the thousands and it was enough to make a living out.
Yeah.
So that's when I made the jump from
Yeah.
working 2 jobs.
Yeah. Did you said Aunt Jerry kind of helped you with the billing and the booking?
Oh yeah, we did all our own
And do it all.
bookwork and billing, and Jerry helped a lot with that.
So this would have been prior to the computer days. So how would you get? So a customer would. How would you be notified that the customer wanted to carry the paper that morning or that week, or wanted to sign up to carry the paper? Did they go to a central office and say, "I want to carry"? What paper was it? By the
It
way?
was the Orlando Sentinel.
Okay. Would they notify the Sentinel that I want to carry the paper, and then they somehow
Yeah, subscribe to the paper, and then
Okay.
we'd get notification for
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you had to keep track of vacations.
Right.
If they suspended the paper for that time. And think about it, today, okay, we can do that through the computer. This is well before computer
All
days.
by hand, yep.
Yeah.
Handwriting out the bills and mailing them. And funny thing is, when the kids were little, and I worked at night, so I was sleeping in the morning, and I'd go out to the mailbox and pick up the mail and get my checks. And they thought that was my job.
That was your job. your job was to wake up, get the mail, and that was your paycheck.
Right, that was my money.
How long would it take you to deliver the papers? 4
Well,
or
as
5 hours?
Yeah, when it grew to its maximum, yeah, it was at least 4 hours.
Mm-hmm. Now, I mentioned to you that my regret is that I never got a chance to ride along with you. I'm sure I was given the opportunity. But, Dad, you've ridden with me before.
Yes.
Describe that chaos.
Everybody should have an opportunity.
Describe the chaos of riding along with Les Weinman while delivering papers.
Well, he's driving down the road. Well, I had more experience with not delivering the daily paper, but he also had this weekly paper that was
Shoppers.
delivered. Yeah, Shoppers Guide that was delivered at every house,
Oh,
not just customers. So here he is riding down the road with his knees on the steering wheel and flipping papers both left and right as it is going.
So the windows of the van or the truck are down.
Right.
You're throwing them out, and you're reaching back and grabbing the next stack to throw. And
Yeah. Well, when Chet was with me, he threw them out the right side, out the passenger side, so it was easier.
uh-huh. Now, would you throw through the window or over the top?
I threw them out the windows.
Out the windows.
Leave them when I was by myself. Yes.
You got pretty good at it?
Pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, you'd have to be with that. How many years did you do it?
I think it was right at 37.
Wow.
But we had the routes for that long, but the last 2 years, Jerry did it.
Mm-hmm.
Because my shoulders had gotten to a point I couldn't do it anymore.
Couldn't throw.
And so I got another job.
So, you had to fold the papers, stuff the papers, rubber band the papers?
Well, when we first started, it was rubber banding them. And then they come up with the idea that they should be in a bag every day.
Well, you had to bag them then.
Then we had to bag them every day.
And this is just throwing them as close to the front door as you could, or
Just in the driveway.
somewhere in that area.
Somewhere. Yeah.
somewhere in that area. Yeah.
Yeah. Get them where the customer could find them.
So you think everybody should have the opportunity to ride with Les Weinman?
that's an experience I will never forget. Yeah.
I think all Bob's boys rode with me at one
Mhm.
time or the other when
Yeah.
they were on vacation.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you got out of that.
Yeah. Aunt Jerry isn't here with us at the taping of this, but talk about you twins.
Oh, yeah.
And the birth of the twins. What was that? Did you know you were going to have twins?
We knew, I think it was in about her 6th or 7th month. Because they didn't do sonograms back in those days, but
Yeah.
they did x-ray her. And the doctor just said there's 2 in there.
Now,
And
we have-
possibly 3 because he's seen something else in there, but he didn't know what it was.
Are there twins in our family?
Her family and her aunt had twins.
Okay.
But nothing real immediate family, I mean, her or I.
Well, but in our family though, we have cousins. The Edith.
Oh, that's
no,
right.
Not Edith. Well, Aunt Mary's twin girls, Vera and I can't the other names now.
Right, but so it
that'd
was
be
cousins,
Uncle
yeah.
Harry's. Yeah, it should be cousins. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, 2
Vera
kids.
and Ruth.
2 kids.
2 parents. You're diapering too, then, aren't you? You're holding and feeding and diapering as well, right?
Yep, because they didn't have throwaway diapers back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it
It was
wasn't
doing
like
a lot of laundry.
one could do it. You both had a crying
Yeah.
baby in your hands. at
Most
one
of
time.
the time, well, besides that, I would wash the diapers in the nighttime, then I'd hang them out in the morning before I left for work.
Yeah.
And because Jerry had a pretty hard time with her delivery and recovery time.
Mhm.
And her mom stayed with us for 2 weeks after they came home.
Mhm.
So that made it a little...
Only 2 weeks though.
Yeah.
Wow.
If I remember right, they were just like a couple of months old when Dad died, wasn't it?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
So did
Okay.
Grandpa get to
Yeah.
see him?
Yeah, they were over the night before.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Who's older?
Sandy,
Sandy.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. There's my headphones falling
Oh,
out.
okay.
10 minutes?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I didn't get there from work because I was working in Orlando when I got the call that Jerry, well, her mom called me and said, I'm taking Jerry to the doctor. She's having a lot of pain. So you might want to come home.
And you were working for the electronic repair.
Yeah, it's called Electrotech.
Uh-huh.
And so I got home as quick as I could, but she got to the doctor said, get to the hospital immediately. And hopefully you won't drop him before you get there. And
Was
she
that-
was only in labor for, I don't know, it was less than probably 30 minutes.
That would have been the Eustis Hospital?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So I didn't, of course, they didn't let the fathers in the
No.
delivery room back then like they do nowadays. So I didn't see them till after they were born. Oh, and a funny thing, she went to the room, in the room with the babies, and I went to Lillian's to see her and had supper. And then I came back and I went back into that room. And I bent over and said, "Hi, how you doing?" And it was a different person.
It wasn't.
Oh,
They changed rooms.
Was it Aunt Jerry?
No.
Was it? Oh, no.
yeah.
Why did you pick Stephen and Sandra as the name?
I really don't know. We had a lot of names we went through, but we wanted them to have the same
They're not
initials.
named after somebody.
No,
Okay.
no, but their initials are both SDW.
Yeah.
And we wanted them to match with the same initials,
Mhm.
which has now changed since Sandy's married, but
Yeah.
that's what they grew up as.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, we've talked about this before. In fact, I took Stephen to the airport today, and they both have careers that they enjoy and they
Oh,
love
yeah.
and they thrive at. They're very good at. Stephen works for Disney as a costumer. Sandy's the deputy sheriff, and a granddaughter that is getting her
Master's degree
at
in
the taping of this, a master's degree.
civil engineering.
Yeah, Blaine.
Blaine.
Yeah, you don't get to see her as much as you used to, do you?
Oh, no.
Remember, Les, our spring breaks, we'd always go to Florida, and I think about at least 1 year, but maybe twice, that we went deep sea fishing with Les and Sandy.
You get seasick. I got
Sandy,
seasick.
Oh.
you were out of
Yeah.
school, of course,
Yeah.
your vacation, but Sandy had to skip school that
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sandy
Yeah.
and I are probably more alike than not. There's more things we share in common. One of which is the competitive spirit. We've been known to tread water for hours.
Oh,
until
yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever
Either one of us wanna give up.
Whenever
Yeah.
Kevin was in Florida and he had the pool, they would see how long they could tread water or stay underwater.
Mm-hmm.
And
Finally, I think Aunt Jerry would say, "You're done. Let's get out of here.
It was-
Time for bed," or
it
whatever.
got dark, and then got him in the house.
I used to because we would go there for our. I don't know how often, Dad, we'd go down to Florida. It wasn't every year, but every other
Right.
year or something. But
Right.
we always stayed with Uncle Les.
Yeah.
And I thought he had a mansion. I thought it was the biggest house I've
Oh,
ever
yeah.
seen. It was the coolest house because it had a pony outside and a pool outside and a pool table inside, and rooms just went on, and it sat way off the road, and it had a baseball diamond in the back, and all those are true, but now we go by and look at it. It isn't as big as I remember it. You must have shrunk the house, and somehow the road got closer to the front door because it doesn't sit as far back.
And
What
we
I
dumped-
remember though too, at that time of the year that we were there, apparently I don't know when it happens, but that field was always blooming with flocks.
yeah, right.
Yeah, in the springtime, beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, we've got good memories of a lot of good softball games played back there.
Well, what a great
Volleyball.
home to raise twins in.
Oh,
to
yeah.
kids in, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think they liked it, and
Yeah.
it was good for us.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the story too that Stephen told me that those who have seen your house know that the river rock that's in the front of that came from New Jersey. Is that
Right.
right? Yeah.
Yep. And Walt Weinman would bring them down when he'd come down in the wintertime on a trailer, and then work on it during
So
the
he
winter.
bought the house. He added on to what was the
Right,
original.
the original house, yeah.
And I think you said that the owner of the sawmill
Right,
originally built the house.
right. He built that for his parents.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, anything else you guys can think of?
No, except one thing, last year, remember what's kind of interesting about the house was owned by the church. And
Wait.
Oh.
His house or Grandpa's
no,
house?
You're talking about our-
grandpa's house, yeah, not your
Kevin's
house.
grandpa, yeah,
Yeah,
our,
yeah,
our
your-
house.
Right,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
But it was kind of interesting, the fact that the deed, which Les and I remember we went to the courthouse and dug out that information, and the deed shows that Dad, being a trustee of the church, signed the deed as a seller, but also signed it as a buyer.
Buyer. Yeah.
I thought that was neat.
I don't think many people can say they've done that.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
I don't think so.
Of course, there
No.
were two other signatures. Two other trustees signed it also. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
But when we first moved in the house we in now, the kids thought it was haunted,
Yeah.
and they didn't like going inside the house. And then
Oh, yes.
they slept downstairs because it is two-story and there's two bedrooms upstairs. But they slept downstairs till probably they were 10 or 12 years old before they got their own rooms upstairs.
Yeah.
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 That's funny.
And Stephen, because had sold our house where the kids were born, and we lived with Grandma with Jerry's mom for almost a year. And then we moved into the house, and we first moved over there. Stephen tried to run away on his tricycle.
Yeah.
Now, it's on Church Street. Is that the name of the
Correct.
street? Right. And it's named because it's on
Church, like
the
yeah,
church.
Yeah.
probably, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense then too.
Yep.
You remember growing up in a small town has its advantages and disadvantages. Would you say there's more advantages or disadvantages? Not only growing up in a small town, but living in a small town.
I
That's
think
all you've known, really.
For us brothers, Chet and our other brother, I think it was an advantage
Yeah. Yeah.
because we had woods to play in, fields to play ball in. I guess if there was a disadvantage, we had to go walk, I don't know, a quarter mile,
Yeah.
maybe to the
Yeah.
post office and the store.
Yeah.
And talking about the post office, I mean, that was kind of our social life of the day.
Go down and get the mail.
And get the mail.
Yeah.
And
So it wasn't delivered to the house. You had to
no,
go
it was
pick it
not
up.
delivered. Yeah, and of course we liked it when the delivery was late because that meant we got to visit more down at the post office. You know, yeah, that was the time really of fellowship with other kids and with Mrs. Tarbett, of course, was.
Then we picked our mail up and Grandpa and Grandma's mail and the Fru's mail, I believe we did.
Yes.
And on the way home, we just delivered the mail.
Yeah, and Mrs. Judson.
And Miss Judson.
And she would not like for us to leave. She wanted us to sit down on the swing with her and talk a while.
Well, who was it that you said they paid you to weed the garden or weed the yard?
And
Oh,
Nellie.
Aunt Nellie.
And one of you said got paid more than the other.
Yeah. He probably got paid more, but he did a better
A
job.
better job, maybe that's what it was.
Might have
Now
been.
we call her Aunt Nellie. She was no relation,
No
but
relation.
everybody called her Aunt Nellie. But I remember something else about her was she would, and she went to the same church we did, and she would give us her old magazines, the Post and the Life magazines, yeah. But all of them had a lot of pages that had things missing that were cut out. And what it was all of the alcohol or cigarette commercials.
She cut 'em out.
Cut them out.
Oh,
yeah.
that's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Now, those people listening to this who've been to Mount Dora, they know it as this quaint, antique flea market, bed and breakfast little town. That wasn't the case when you grew up.
No, because that was our main town. The grocery stores were there, clothing stores, drug stores.
Yeah.
Everything was in town
Where did Grandma go shopping?
in Mount Dora.
Grocery shopping in
Piggly Wiggly.
The Piggly Wiggly, and then when it was gone, I think it was Thriftway, maybe? I don't remember.
I only remember the Piggly Wiggly was the main one. There
Right.
were some smaller
Yeah,
ones.
and then there was a meat market, Parker's Meat Market, where they did some shopping in there.
Remember though, Les, that on Saturday mornings is when that she would go shopping, would ride in with Dad, and she would be gone for the whole half a day almost. You know?
Because he worked half a day, and then he'd go to the bank and cash his check, and they'd go shopping.
And we took advantage of that mother not being there because we knew that with her being there, we wouldn't be able to do target practice with the rifle.
Uh-oh.
So that was our time
That
to
was
get
just
the
time to go
rifle
do things
out.
you would do.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
do target practice. Yeah,
Yeah,
shoot tin cans. Yeah, yeah.
but we built a house out in the woods with chicken wire and moss.
Right.
Again, things didn't
It was-
cost any money.
Right.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Well, you remember Christmas presents? What'd you get for Christmas?
Usually it was clothing, and then we'd get a present that would be more like a game or something
for the
that
whole
the whole
family.
family would play with. Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Chet was a special, so he may have got something better.
got something better.
No.
And you said you saw TV or owned a TV set when you were about junior in high school when Charlie left.
Right.
So there were just the three of you. Grandma and Grandpa said, "Well, we got to occupy this kid somehow."
Try to keep him home. Yeah.
Yeah, Les and Ed are the only two in the family that had this experience of being the only child at home.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I thought of that. That's true.
Yeah.